Hello there, good to see you again. Wednesday, and well, not quite so good weather-wise, but hopefully you got some benefit. I realise now folks are beginning to seriously venture out into the world. Shops are opening, forget shops, hairdressers have got an appointments list that goes on for months, and people are still still going to get their hair cut for the first time months from now because there's just so many appointments. Does um, leave you with the question is what is it we've truly missed? What are the things that we've really, what are the essentials that have brought us to the point where we are now? And what are the things that we really want to get back to? John Lennox, Where is God in a Coronavirus World? He quotes right at the beginning of the book Chief Justice Mogoeng. He is Chief Justice in the legal system in South Africa. And he quotes him simply because he did something which very few leaders did at this point. Obviously, a reflection on South African society. He made a very memorable appeal, I think back in March. My call is to all those who can pray to see it as an absolute necessity starting from today to do so. What have you done over the last 3 months that has kind of helped to make sense of the challenges, the difficulties, in some cases, the grief and the pain? People have done different things, and it's just one of the things that kind of what things do we rely on, what things do we come back to, and it's specifically because things are tough and things are not good that it necessitates a real support, something that gives us the opportunity and the strength to get through. I remember it's a long time ago now, the guy, it was a kind of it was a video trying to explain to students the Christian faith, and this individual who was in a wheelchair in not Strathclyde, it was Stirling University, and he was explaining why he believed in Jesus, despite the fact that lots of folks looked at his situation, his difficulty. I think he wasn't quadriplegic; he could activate the wheelchair with his hands, but he had this very real restriction and lack of mobility, and he was working on the basis that lots of people seem to think that he shouldn't have faith. So why did he when things were so difficult for him compared to others? And he said, people often react badly to the idea, it's used as a form of criticism, that Christianity is a crutch. And he said, I've never seen it that way. A crutch is something that supports you and keeps you upright when, if it was just down to you, you would fall over. He said, my faith is a crutch. It empowers me and it strengthens me, and it enables me to cope when being in a wheelchair is just something that makes him swear and shake his fist at the sky. In other words, he does not descend into the pit of despair, but he actually deals directly with God and speaks to God. And it's just the thing that John Lennox here makes reference to. Not that God, he's quite clear and correct. he's been waiting for my affirmation all this time. He's quite clear about the fact that he quotes James and various other sources in the New Testament. God doesn't send bad things for us to be overcomers and kind of be people who can get past the difficulty. But what he's saying is, in the difficulty, God redeems every bad thing and makes it into an opportunity for us to think and get back to a place where we're talking with him. In other words, things that are bad can necessitate a searching, a pondering, a re-examination in some cases of things that have been put to one side. And again, just going to read a bit from. The coronavirus is so called because it visibly resembles a crown, and the Latin word for crown is corona. A crown is a symbol of power and authority, and certainly this virus has a colossal power over us humans. It is invisible to the naked eye, and yet think about what it has forced so many millions, indeed billions, for us to do and not do. It also forcibly reminds us of our vulnerability. It's easy to forget that we are humans in a human world and are mortal. The coronavirus is evidence that both our relationship with creation and our relationship with creation and creation's relationship with us are profoundly disordered. And that is not an accident. The hope is that there is another corona, spiritually speaking, the corona of thorns, the crown that points towards Christ being who he was and what he did. And through his pain, we're drawn into that position where we can talk to our Heavenly Father. And then this is a quote from C.S. Lewis. It's a very, very famous quote. If you know nothing about C.S. Lewis, you might have heard this because it's one that, just as C.S. Lewis does, he very ably analyses our situation. In a fractured world, damaged through the consequences of human sin and pain and suffering are inevitable. Perhaps we are hidden from this reality until things such as the coronavirus rampage across the globe. Now we cannot ignore it, nor can we ignore the big questions about life and death which it prompts. Here's C.S. Lewis. We can ignore even pleasure, but pain insists on being attended to. You may recall C.S. Lewis went through the grief of losing his wife, wrote a very, very thin book called A Grief Observed, where you'd have to read the book to recognise it wasn't glib, but just the sense of when things are incredibly tough, the reality of God being alongside makes it more straightforward, more livable for us to get through. No, it doesn't take the pain away, but he points towards pain as something which helps. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks to us in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. It's that concept of God from on high with a megaphone at his mouth, not shouting, but letting the megaphone do the talking. The coronavirus might function as a huge loudspeaker, says Lennox, reminding us of the ultimate statistics. When we are so focused on the statistics of infection and morbidity, the one statistic that we all must deal with is that one out of every one of us dies. If this induces us to look to God, the God that we may have ignored for years, but the one who wore a crown of thorns that we might understand his suffering, then that seeking out has been an incredibly purposeful thing. The coronavirus, in spite of the havoc it has wreaked, will have served a very healthy purpose. I don't know how you've spent the coronavirus, but if it has been a time of reassessment, of reflection, if it has been a time when the God that you have maybe put to one side or just allowed into wee bits of your life, if it transpires there is a growing awareness, a renewed understanding, God's in charge. Doesn't always feel like it, but it's clearly the idea that humanity's in charge, that clearly is not the case now either. If we have sought out God precisely because of that megaphone that C.S. Lewis talks about, then recognize, do something about it. Leave a comment on the comment section. Phone me up. Come back to church when you can. Come back to church for the first time if you want. It's the fact that God works through the weirdest of things to come alongside and become real. Whatever you do with this time of lockdown, however you have utilized it, consider afresh exactly who God is and exactly what he said to us through this time. Until we see you again, go with God, because I know he goes with you. Bye-bye.